What's good with y'all, boys? Welcome back to another episode of Rand Collar Everything Sports Podcast. Today we're going to break down our top 10 rankings. The official playoff top rankings have been put out. So, Ray, who's coming in at your number 10 spot?
For my number 10, moving down a couple spots, justifiably, it's going to be Oklahoma. We saw them with that big win versus Texas, and then immediately right after that, they struggled versus UCF, and then now losing to Kansas. Don't get me wrong, this Kansas team was a good team, but I expect that Oklahoma defense to be a little bit more efficient than they were. Allowing 38 points is inexcusable, so I had to drop them down a little bit more for me. I think they'll probably be okay. I think they'll probably continue to run through the rest of the Big 12 schedule and then get their rematch versus Texas. But I'm not sure that that's going to be much of a consideration because it seems like Texas is starting to hit another gear after losing to that Oklahoma team. So I think they'll beat them in the conference championship. But for me, I have Oklahoma at 10.
Yeah, I think they deserve to be still in the top 10. We see what Texas did to this Kansas team. They destroyed them. So that's why I think Texas is still a little better. But, yeah, they've had a big letdown against this team, and I don't really think anybody expected this to happen. But I agree with you. They shouldn't drop out too much, but yeah, they definitely took a hit with this loss.
Then number 9, a team that's starting to disappoint a little bit is going to be Penn State. We were really high on their defense, and then they went and let Indiana score 24 points. So they were favored heavily in this game and did not cover by any means. Ended up costing me a mark on our bets record, but I think I had to drop them down a little bit just because. Don't get me wrong, they're still winning games, and they looked good early on, but they're starting to hit a little bit of a low and starting to let teams score a little bit more than I think they should. But I think they'll be able to pick it back up. Hopefully, they can put that loss to Ohio State behind them and can start to pick it back up and look a little bit better going on the rest of this Big Ten stretch.
Yeah, and that's kind of what the biggest thing is for me. That loss to Ohio State probably just stuck with them a little bit longer. So it took them a while to get going against a terrible Indiana team. It shouldn't have been that close. But, the biggest thing is that they got the win, and they still have everything ahead of them playing Michigan also. So I do like this Penn State team, but I think they were in a little bit of a letdown spot coming off that Ohio State loss.
Then at number 8, I had Alabama. We didn't get to see anything from them coming off of that bye, but we did get to see a big win from them versus Tennessee the week before. So we get to see a lot from them coming up this week against this LSU team. And this is really going to cement how the rest of the season is going to look for this Alabama team. If they can win, expect them to jump up. Expect them to that match against Georgia that's inevitable for the SEC championship game to be extremely hyped because it's going to determine if Alabama misses the college football playoffs again or if they can hold Georgia out. But I believe this Alabama team is starting to hit another gear. We saw them start really slowly in the beginning, shifting their quarterback situation around and really trying to figure out that quarterback situation. But now they figured it out, and Jalen Milroe is starting to be able to move the ball through the air, not only with his legs. I think they're really starting to pick it up. I think this Alabama team is starting to get back into their form they've been the last couple of years, and I think they're a really big factor. And I don't think a lot of people are. I think people are still thinking they're a quiet team, a sleeper team, but this Alabama team is here now. I was wrong on them. I thought they were going to be just a bottom of the barrel SEC team, not bottom of the barrel, but for their standards, bottom of the barrel, sitting right around 20 in the rankings. But they've proven me wrong, and they're starting to beat up against good teams. And I really believe this Alabama team is back.
Yeah, I think for me, what I'm looking for in this game is, this is a pretty good test on both sides of the ball. Now, not really offensively for the fact that they're playing a good defense, but I think this can be a good week for their offense to continue to keep rolling, for Jalen Romo to keep building, confidence, and I think they're going to have their way on offense. But for their defense, their defense is solid, so this is a really big test, probably their biggest all year, playing this very explosive and this explosive LSU offense. So I think this is a big test for them on both sides of the ball, just for the offense to get right and the defense to really show how good they are.
Yeah, playing one of probably my Heisman favorite on the other side of the ball too at quarterback. But then at number 7, I do have that Texas team destroying a BYU team who, don't get me wrong, their record was a little bit inflated because that BYU team was not great, but destroying them how they should have, though. So, that BYU team beating them 35-6, holding them to 6 points, putting up 35. It looks like they're starting to hit another gear after losing that Oklahoma team, which is good. It's what we wanted to see, especially knowing they have a basically inevitable rematch with them as long as nothing crazy happens. To be able to make the college football playoffs. So it's good to see this Texas team, despite all their injury problems, are still looking like the Texas team we've seen through most of the year.
Yeah, they were playing a pretty bad BYU team, but to go in there with a backup quarterback and dominate how they did, that's really impressive. And I do think that Oklahoma loss was a little bit of a wake up call for them. So I think that, like you said, it's inevitable. They will probably see Oklahoma, back in that Big 12 championship game. And I do think they'll beat Oklahoma when they play again.
I agree. Then number 6 is going to be Oregon for me. A huge, huge, huge win for me. Seeing them beat up this Utah team. That's a good Utah team that they destroyed. Made them look like they didn't even deserve to be in the game. 35-6. Don't get me wrong. I did expect that this Utah team wouldn't score a whole lot of points. They haven't been able to score a whole lot of points most of the season. But putting up 35 points against a good Utah defense is really, really impressive. I mean, we've seen that this Oregon offense has been really good for most of the year, but now seeing that their defense is continuing to stay with their offense and holding teams like they should is really good. I hate they had to lose that game to Washington earlier on, because otherwise I believe this Oregon team would be really, really high, making a case for the top 3. But for me, I believe their offense is one of the best in the nation. I believe Bo Nix is really cooking with that offense, and I believe this Oregon team is probably the best one-loss team in the nation.
Yeah, and I agree. I really do like this Oregon team a lot. This Utah team that they killed, they had won 18 straight home games. So to go into Utah and beat them how they did, I mean, I had them covering the 6 points because I thought they'd win and win by at least one score, but I would have never, had them going into Utah and beat them how they did. So like you said, I mean, I really do like this Oregon team. They lost to a really good Washington team. I understand, you obviously can't put them over Washington, who's undefeated, and beat them, but I do believe that Oregon's the better team. I mean, they lost because their guy missed a field goal. I mean, that game's going into overtime, and who knows what's going to happen. So I really do like this Oregon team a lot, and I can see them, maybe rematching with Washington and beating them.
Mm-hmm. Next up for me is going to be Florida State, coming off a dominant win against Wake Forest. We've seen them have some struggles on both sides of the ball recently, so a lot of people are starting to really question how that team is going to continue, especially after they get out of that weak ACC and get into the playoffs playing against the big Power 5 teams, how they're going to continue to be. But this team's undefeated. They're beating teams like they should. They did have a couple question mark weeks in there against Boston College and against Clemson, but I believe they were in control against those games, so I think that now seeing them bounce back and destroy this Wake Forest team. We see them beat Duke, even though they didn't have Duke wasn't at full strength. We have seen them beat some good teams. So I think this Florida State team is still a powerhouse, especially over in the ACC.
Yeah, I'm definitely not as big of a Florida State fan as you are, but I mean, I can't ignore the fact this team is a good team. Like you said, they did have a few little, hiccups against Boston College, against Clemson. They definitely could have lost to Clemson, and that Boston College game should not have been as close as it was. But I mean, they looked very dominant this weekend against Wake Forest. I mean, they abused them on every side of the ball. It was ridiculous. I mean, there was a stat at one point, me and Ray watched the game, and they had one 80-yard play, and that was more yards than Wake Forest had that the whole game up to that point. So this Florida State team is good. I do think they're good. I'm not sure how good, and really, I'm not sure how big of a win that was when they played LSU, and really who have they beaten. So we'll see. Like Ray said, when they start to play, real competition outside of the AAC. So we'll see.
The next up for me is going to be Washington at 4. A little bit of a scare this week. Not a scare as far as them losing the game, but allowing 33 points to a Stanford team is not a good look by any means. And then putting up 42 points, yeah, they put up 42 points, but everybody's been doing that to Stanford. I don't really look at that. I look at the other side and I look at they allowed 33 points to Stanford. That's not good. The Stanford team is terrible. So to allow that game to be even within 30 points and then allowing them to score 33 points is really, really worrisome for this Washington team. Don't get me wrong. That Stanford team has looked a little better. I mean, they just beat Colorado, but we've all seen that Colorado is not what we thought they were going to be in the beginning. So to see the Stanford team now took Washington all the way through the ringer and put up 75 points combined, I mean, not a good look for Washington, but they did get the job done. So still have them up, especially over that win against Oregon, still have them at 4.
Yeah, I mean, this Washington, I mean, their defense is definitely a little bit of a concern. They did have a good week though previously against Arizona State, where the defense was shooting, they won that game. I mean, the offense put up 15 points, and the defense won it, only allowing 7, and they settled with a pick. So I think the defense is definitely probably their weakest part of their game. I mean, we know what the offense brings. We know what Michael Penix does, and Roma Dunze, and those weapons that they have over there. So I think if they were to lose, it would be because of the defense. And I think that this USC game, it could be a little bit of a sleeper, just because I don't think that they're going to be able to stop USC. But the good thing for them is USC is definitely not going to be able to stop them.
And then I get into my top 3, and I believe that at any other point, at any other year, any of these teams would be a number 1. But we have such three such major powerhouses to me that it's hard to move these teams around. But for me at number 3 right now, I have Georgia, bumping them up a little bit. They're continuing to win. And we were wondering how, when they started playing against these better teams, how it was going to be. They played Kentucky, now they played Florida, and now they're coming up this week against Missouri, which I think is going to be their biggest test so far. But beating that Florida team now don't get me wrong, this Florida team is not what we originally thought they were in the beginning of the year, but beating them 43-20, putting up 43 points, I think that's really, really a statement win for Georgia. I think they needed a couple more of those, especially now going into this week versus Missouri. And this is a good Missouri team. Let's not sleep on this game because Georgia it's not a pushover game for them. It's not a normal Missouri team that they're playing. This is a good Missouri team. It's the best Missouri team they've seen in a while. So if Georgia can get through this game, and if they can blow them out like they've been blowing out like the Kentucky and the Florida, it's really, really going to cement Georgia as being here and ready to play and being ready for the college football playoffs. So I have Georgia at 3, but don't get me wrong, this is a good Georgia team. Any other year, I think they can make a really good, strong case for a 1.
Yeah, I really do like this Georgia team. I think we need to start giving them a little more credit, to be honest. It seems like every week that's supposed to be a big game, they go out and destroy a team. I understand they do, they had that bad game against Auburn that they still won. They had that slow start against South Carolina. But, they have these slow starts, but they're so great that they're able to turn it on and turn it off when they need to. We saw against Kentucky, destroyed them. We saw against last week against Florida, destroyed them. And I should have took the -14. But, I don't know, because this Missouri team is pretty good, like you said. But it seems like every time they play a big game, they just take it to another level and just kill the team.
Yeah, and then at number 2 and number 1, I think that this is mainly the reason I have Georgia at 3 is because these two teams are so good. Number 2 for me is going to be Michigan. This Michigan team has been blowing up teams, but to me, they haven't had a staple win. And then you look at their other Big Ten counterpart, they've had several. So if that's the main determining factor for me is, don't get me wrong, this Michigan team's offense is the best in the country right now as far as numbers because they're blowing teams out. They're not allowing teams to score, but they're also not playing anybody. So to me, I'm not going to fault them because they're not allowing games to be close, but I can't also vault them to number 1 because the Big Ten counterpoint that I have in number 1 has been beating good teams. So for me, I think we have a matchup set for the end of the season, a very big matchup that I think everybody's waiting to see. But for right now, I have Michigan at 2.
Yeah, and you can't put either Georgia or Michigan over Ohio State right now just because of the resume that Ohio State has. But I do think that both those teams are better than Ohio State. But like you said, this Michigan team, they're doing what they need to do to bad teams. They have an average margin of victory of 34. They're killing teams. They're destroying the bad teams, and the games are never in doubt. So you can't fault or vault them just because their schedule is so weak. But I do like Michigan at number 2.
Then at number 1, I think it's got to be consensus at this point, is Ohio State. Quality wins across the board against Penn State, against Notre Dame, and now beating a good Wisconsin team. Don't get me wrong, only scored 24 points. But that's a good Wisconsin team over there, and that's a good defense that they had, and holding them to 10 points is really impressive. I think all around the board, from offense and a defensive standpoint, they're loaded in this Ohio State team. I think they're beating teams like they should be, and I think they really have a matchup set for Michigan at the end of the year. That both teams are going to be undefeated, and I think it's going to really determine who's going to be the number 1 seed in the playoffs. And I have to be on the other side of that. I think this Ohio State team is the best team in the country, and I don't think any team can beat them right now.
Yeah, I see what you said. I really do, just because of the wins that they have. But yeah, I understand that Michigan and Georgia haven't played anybody, but I do think they're better. And I know you have Ohio State beating Michigan when they play. I have Michigan beating Ohio State, and I think they'll. Whatever the spread is, I don't know where they're playing at, but I'm going to take Michigan and probably the points if they get points, or if they yeah, I'm going to take Michigan in that game. I think they're the better team, but this Ohio State team, they're winning without their best players. Emeka Egbuka's been out. Maya Williams, their running back, he's out for the season now, and he's going to have surgery. They have a safety and a cornerback that have been out too. They're winning without some of their best players, and their young quarterbacks is playing good as well. They still have the best receiver in college football. He's insane. Marvin Harrison. I do think that last game with Ohio State and Michigan will be the Heisman game too for who will win it. But we'll talk about it later. But yeah.
But yeah, that's going to be our updated top 10. Some big matchups coming this week. Alabama has to play LSU. Georgia has to play Missouri. So we'll get to see a lot of moving around coming up this following week. So make sure to stay tuned with us and locked in, and we'll see y'all next week.
Peace.